On behalf of VMWARE, I'd like to welcome you to today's webcast, Security Best Practices in a Software-Defined Data Center, presented by William Bell of phoenixNAP. Thank you for participating in today's webcast and for your continued support in the Global VMWARE program. Before we begin, I have a few quick housekeeping items to go over. First, today's webcast will be recorded and available for on-demand. You'll receive a follow-up email with the on-demand link from today's webcast, so be looking out for that. Second, a Q&A session will follow today's presentation. All questions will need to be entered in the question window near the bottom of your GoToWebinar screen. Third, there will be a short online evaluation that pops up as you exit the webcast. Please make sure to take a minute and let us know what you thought of today's session and what you might like to see going forward. All right, let's get started. I would like to introduce you to today's presenter, William Bell, Executive Vice President of Products at phoenixNAP. William, I would like to turn things over to you.
All right, thank you guys very much, and thank you everyone for attending today. I wanted to take a little bit of your time this afternoon to talk through what we consider to be security best practices when you're looking at a software-defined data center. Obviously, and we'll talk a little bit more about phoenixNAP, we have VMware SDDC-based cloud services, but I think these really apply to whether you're existing in a hosted cloud or you're looking at building your own. And depending on your environment and what's important to you, I think that today's material will hopefully be beneficial to a lot of different use cases. So we'll start a little bit with who phoenixNAP is. For those of you that don't know who we are an infrastructure as a service company, globally distributed, and founded in 2009 with a little over 500 employees and still growing. We have 10 plus data center locations around the globe, and so really focused heavily on growing that global footprint. And I apologize, it looks like there's auto advance on. If it advances once again, then I'm going to stop the presentation and fix it. But so this will give you a little bit of an idea of what it looks like for our global deployments today. We don't have every service in every location, but we're working towards parity. And you're really focused on making sure that you have kind of one throat to choke worldwide, and an infrastructure platform that you can rely on, whether it's a VMware cloud-based service, which we're talking about today, or many other infrastructure products that we offer. So I'll dive in a little bit into kind of what we do. I'm going to spend most of our time talking about some of the security components of VMware environments and cloud services in particular. But this gives you kind of a high-level snapshot of what's important to us and kind of where we see infrastructure, both as a service and operated by end users in the sense of co-location, and kind of the best practices that we look at every single day and what we follow as we build our products and services out in our global environments. So I mentioned this ahead of time. We are a premier service provider with VMware in the VMware Cloud Provider Program. It is the top level of certification and partner level in the cloud services community at VMware. And we were one of the first 6 VMware cloud partners worldwide in 2011. So we've been doing this a really, really long time. And a couple of our platforms, specifically one of our platforms that we're going to talk about today, actually has attained VMware's Cloud Verified status, which is their top tier certification, and really professing to match VMware's commitment to the software-defined data center, and specifically what they're doing in VMware cloud services themselves, not just VMC on AWS, but also the other hyperscalers that they're working with. And what we're working to do every single day is provide that same experience, but really focus on being cost effective and catering the infrastructure to a specific workload. So we're working every single day to try to make sure that the workloads that our customers are looking at bringing to us, we've got a solution to match that, and not really just a one-size-fits-all approach, right? We think that there's a lot more that can be done when you position the right type of infrastructure for that application. And I'm not going to dive too much into that today. I've done some other presentations about application or workload-specific infrastructure, and also on like private cloud designs and things like that. What we see is important in the future. So I'll kind of just leave that there. For those of you that haven't heard the term SDDC, I doubt you're a VMWARE member and haven't heard the term SDDC. But really making sure that you're getting a composable infrastructure substrate that you can automate and deliver to either your external customers or to your internal customers, and really making sure that you're able to click and provision not only the compute resources, storage resources, network resources, but really start to get the entire ecosystem of software that helps make infrastructure powerful and make that quickly deployable and orchestratable in these environments. And whether that's leveraging infrastructure automation, infrastructure as code, or if that's building your own applications that have the ability to automate and scale these resources as are necessary. And what we see as you look at these technologies, what is closely related to HCI, but not exactly the same or synonymous with each other. But what you start to see is you get real cost efficiencies and time to market, the ability to implement that solution very quickly in an automated fashion and have that workload delivered to your end user as quickly as humanly possible, and really try to remove the days of yesteryear where you call up somebody, order some monolithic object server, SAN, whatever it is, load balancer, firewall, wait for it to arrive, plug it in somewhere, and 5 weeks later you have your solution that you needed to meet 4 weeks ago. So that's the old school way of thinking, and we're working along with our partners at VMware and other ecosystem providers to try to make that no longer something that you have to deal with. And one of the things we're going to talk a lot about today is just making sure that through this automation, orchestration, and through the programmability of the software-defined data center, that you're able to improve your security posture. And that is really important as you try to get a handle on protecting critical workloads in enterprise environments today. So when we look at the global analyst community and the market size, it's not so much that these numbers should mean a lot to you in terms of values, but really in terms of the compound aggregated growth rate, right? That CAGR is so high, which means that adoption of SDDC constructs is taking hold across the entire market space and the traditional consumer of private cloud environments. This isn't very heavily chopped up into delivered as a service or integrated on premises, but we think that there's a healthy bit of both going on, right? We really are big believers that this is a hybrid world, and that for a long time customers are going to choose, whether that's for cost, whether that's for agility, whether that's for control, to bring workloads as close to premises as possible and manage them themselves. Will there be consumption of hybrid cloud or public cloud environments? Absolutely. Many workloads are perfect for the public cloud, and they're more cost effective to run in public cloud. But what we're finding is that customers are getting really smart about what needs to go into a true PaaS public cloud, like a Microsoft Azure or VMware, or AWS, and what still suits the company best to be run in a traditional environment with heavy control, change control, and a centralized IT policy framework that truly does matter to a lot of organizations. And as you start getting into how VMware fits into this market and how their ecosystem, ourselves included, fit into this market, we're starting to see massive adoption of the entire portfolio of SDDC components that VMware is building. And when we look at software-defined data center at VMware, they have a very compelling and complete story in their mind around all of the different services that they have built. But the things that continuously come up and resonate are vSphere, NSX, and vSAN, right? And that's kind of your basic building blocks of the software-defined data center. There are a lot of automation components that make that even more of a composable infrastructure environment and allow you to really orchestrate that environment and treat it as kind of infrastructure as code. But for the purposes of this conversation today and not getting too far out into the weeds of the portfolio, we'll focus on those areas. And so one of the major challenges, and we're going to talk about why here in a second, of software-defined data center constructs is security. And we're going to, like I said, we'll dive into it. But when people when you start having discussions with folks about what they think of security in general, not just from an SDDC application perspective, most people look at it as still a very significant challenge for their environment, whether that's skill sets or time or investment or whatever the reason is. It's seen as a challenge. And most people and a lot of folks, if you look at other other reports that talk about concerns of the CIO and IT concerns of executives in organizations, you'll find that security and compliance continue to be in the top three, and probably will for a very, very long time, if not forever. And addressing those challenges have become extremely difficult. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So why, as you make this transition to hybrid cloud, to software-defined data centers, why is it harder to execute on a security playbook? And these are just a couple of reasons, but I'm happy to take questions as to diving deep into any area that anybody wants to pose. But I really look at this first one as being the most important reason, right? And it kind of goes hand in hand with the fourth one in data growth and sprawl. But this ability to just spin up resources and have developers making infrastructure in a virtualized construct inside of a software-defined data center and just get what you need when you need it, and move data anywhere across the environment, not only in a thick VM, physical server, container, function, whatever that is. The data is transitioning so many layers of infrastructure and platform services today in software-defined data centers that it becomes very difficult to not only know where your data is, but place controls around that data, and ensure that those systems that house your most critical assets aren't exposed inadvertently to things that they shouldn't be. That doesn't just mean the internet. Sometimes that means just untrusted internal networks, right? That are easily attackable from those those difficult to defend against drive-by downloads and email phishing attacks, right? The ones where your CFO's desktop just gets popped out of nowhere. Sometimes your critical assets are inadvertently exposed to those end users just from some regular desktop environment. And so, there's a lot of other reasons that are mentioned here. And I think that you're starting to see even more attention be placed on the host infrastructure. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. We're amazing partners with the guys at Intel, but everyone has suffered from hardware vulnerabilities that affect the hypervisor probably more than I've seen it in its entire existence, at least back to the old GSX days, right, of VMware. So, this is definitely a severe concern and something that needs to be paid attention to, not only in an end-user environment or in a self-managed environment, on-prem private cloud, but also in hosted infrastructure. So let this kind of build out here. So when we look at building compliance and security focused infrastructure services, and I believe this will apply to pretty much anyone who's looking at building any type of cloud environment, including on-prem private clouds. It all starts with your architecture, right? It really does start with understanding how the information flows, what should happen in an environment, what shouldn't happen in an environment, and making sure that everyone understands exactly how an environment should look in its known good state, and making sure that you're not only looking at the virtual constructs, which we're going to talk about the network here in a second, but looking at the physical components as well, and making sure that known good infrastructure is in place that can be checked and consistently vetted over time to make sure that it hasn't been compromised, that it hasn't, it isn't an exposure point for your environment. And as you kind of move into the guest and into the virtualized networks infrastructure, the old school way of doing things is really no longer valid in these software-defined data centers, right? Specifically, things like traditional network ACLs and traditional perimeter firewalls. These, as the only line of defense, is absolutely no longer sufficient, because people are dynamically provisioning infrastructure and applications, and if you can't dynamically provision your security controls along with it, you're going to have a compromise. That's just the way it is. And so you start to look at things like microsegmentation and application isolation, and making sure that not only do you understand the IP addresses and the ports that things are communicating on, but as much as possible, the application and the user, the identity of those components, you understand what those values are, so that you can place the right types of restrictions and controls around that environment. And so, you kind of put that in hand with really strong policy management and control, and then you institute that kind of last line of defense, right? And making sure that you always have a solid backup strategy, a solid disaster recovery strategy. You would be absolutely shocked at the number of folks out there that could have been instantly recovered from the latest whatever ransomware attack, compromised a piece of infrastructure, with just a solid backup that is secure and in a known good state. It can be as simple as blowing away that compromised machine and putting the backup that's known as a good backup in from 6-7 hours ago, right? And in instances where poor architecture and security controls are put in place, things like ransomware can take over your backups. I mean, they're getting smarter. They understand that backups are a easy route out of a ransomware compromise in a lot of environments, depending on the recovery point objective of that data. And they're starting to look at ways to try to compromise those backups, and to stay, kind of silent for a while, to make sure that their piece of malware is there and resistant to these types of restorations. So it's definitely something to think about. So we talked a little bit about the identity We're going to try to dive a little bit more into, just some of the basics. I mean, some of you guys that think this is going to be pretty basic, but you'd be surprised at the number of customers we run into that can't just get these kind of real easy stuff right. Making sure you have, antivirus, firewall policies at the perimeter, and then moving that into the firewall policies and application level security groups with things like NSX and its microsegmentation capabilities, making sure that you have a patching process that is solid and that you're not letting these virtual machines just slip way behind the times, and getting the buy-in from the business to make that patching schedule appropriate for the security posture that you believe is necessary. Making sure you have your intrusion detection and prevention systems, not just at a network level, but also at a host level perspective as well, so that you understand when a VM has changed in a manner that you're unfamiliar with, which may be the only piece of evidence that you have that a compromise has occurred. Really working hard to ensure that you're using known best practices around network isolation and encryption, right? Make sure your protocols are up to date. Don't just assume that the SSL based application you wrote 15 years ago is still good to go because it's SSL, right? Get in there, understand the ciphers, understand the negotiation protocols, make sure that you have solid encryption everywhere, that you have systems that can tell you when something has changed, right? Whether that's CPU, RAM usage, network flow constructs, and understanding, what has started talking to something else that's abnormal. There are so many different ways to look at security and actually improve your security when you have these components in place, because there is more visibility into network and applications from a security perspective than ever before, right? It's just that you have to implement those capabilities in your environment, or you have to consume a service that is implementing those capabilities for you. And so, I kind of beat the dynamic security provisioning drum earlier, but I continue to be astounded by the number of folks that we talk to every single day that are struggling just to get these basic things taken care of, and a lot of times it comes down to something as simple as it's really difficult to hire and retain security talent, even people that have a basic understanding of many of these ideas and capabilities. They struggle to retain them and find them to augment their environment. They struggle to convince the business that it is important, that security is an insurance policy, but it can be the most effective insurance policy that you can ever have, right? It's not just reactive; it can be proactive, and that message is very hard to get across to a lot of folks in a lot of companies. We talked a little bit about microsegmentation. If you haven't researched the capabilities that NSX has built, not only through their own technology, but also through partnerships with third parties, you would be amazed, right? Not only through service insertion capabilities, where partners like Palo Alto and the like are integrating with NSX kind of perimeter firewall capabilities, and with microsegmentation. But also when you look at what VMware is doing with technologies like App Defense and vRealize Network Insight, and making sure that all of these components have a security view in their environments, right? So maybe that tool isn't designed specifically for security, but they want to make sure that they can get all the data that's relevant to security posture and environment bubbled up in those technologies as well. And that kind of rolls in with application isolation. Getting in with your internal compliance folks, if you have them, and if you don't, trying to do it yourself as the IT admin or the security guy, making sure that there are strong policies in place. It's more important than ever before because you're being asked by the business to hand over the keys to making applications and making infrastructure to other folks and providing that in a completely self-service manner. So you have to really make sure that you have control as best as possible over where that data goes and what threats that data is now under based on where it's being leveraged. And truly ensuring that you have technologies in place to ensure that you have solid backups, 3-2-1 strategy, right? 3 copies, 2 separate types of media, 1 being offsite, and preferably able to justify and afford replicating that data to an entire other, whether that's a third party or to another on-premises private cloud. Disaster recovery in the cloud is more cost effective than it's ever been. And I thought 3 years ago that it was an everyman capability, and the pricing for these technologies and these capabilities have come down so far from even that point. I would hesitate to believe that a company couldn't justify disaster recovery in the cloud today based on the budget that they have, because it's just not as an expensive part of the entire IT budget anymore. It used to be double. Hey, I need 2 of everything, and it's just going to cost double, and all the management on top of that. That's a thing of yesteryear, right? And not only people like ourselves, but others are offering very effective disaster recovery in the cloud capabilities. VMware just announced a new enhancement to their VMware vCloud availability capabilities. phoenixNAP happens to be one of only 5 providers in the United States that are offering these new capabilities, and I'm going to talk a little bit about them here in a little bit. So what's our solution, right? When you look at phoenixNAP, okay, William, you've spent the last 30 minutes telling me all the things that I need to do or things that I'm doing wrong. What are you doing about this? And I'm happy to say that we do have what I believe is one of the most solid secure infrastructure as a service offerings on the market today. We call it Data Security Cloud. And the vision behind this environment, we have a kind of an original VMware cloud product, but what we found in the market was that no provider was helping customers get their security posture to a better state than before their migration to the cloud. And so we wanted to create a solution that helped a customer up their game specifically by boarding their applications in our cloud service inside Data Security Cloud, right? Making sure that they have basic antivirus capabilities, perimeter firewall, VPN capabilities, backups that are taken on a regular basis, that are stored in a secure location, right? And all of the other infrastructure management controls that you are forced to do yourself today, or likely are not doing, ensuring that you have someone there kind of watching your back. And taking that a step further, and with add-on solutions and with other kind of higher end bundles, making sure that you can get the right security capabilities for the type of workload that you have and that you're bringing into a hosted cloud service, and really working to deliver 24/7 threat management and response on that critical IT infrastructure that you have, right? And so we have some really great solutions that are specifically designed for folks that care about security It is more cost effective than I think you could imagine, right? Because in the past, when you heard ideas like this, it was always boutique and come talk to us, tell us about all the things and ailments that you have, and we'll cook up this really expensive managed security service for you. That's not what's occurring here, right? We're helping you get there. We're not wrapping our arms around you and just saying it's going to be okay. We'll take care of everything. Pay us $1 million, right? It's about empowering our customers to help achieve compliance and security in their environment. So we'll talk just quickly and briefly through what makes up this environment today. I'm not going to read through all this, but having that secure by design architecture that is being monitored, changed in accordance with strict compliance standards like PCI and HIPAA, and having all of these next generation technologies powered by VMware and their ecosystem partners to help create that true micro-segmented zero trust network construct, and really isolating those applications and users from the outside world and from places that they shouldn't have access to. All of that kind of being rolled in and delivered as one package, one service that a customer can consume. And I think that there's truly nothing like it on the market today. And I think it would be, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that there's no skimping on the technology either, right? This is not a one size fits all. Okay, we've got some infrastructure we had laying around, and just bring us your application, and we'll just keep throwing boxes at it till it works. This is latest and greatest stuff, right? From Intel, there's the on-scalable processor platform. We're working to integrate things like persistent memory, Optane NVMe. So it's entirely redundant 10 gigabit Arista environment. There's a lot of things going on from a next generation technology perspective. Exactly what you would think about if you were building a private cloud today. This gets a little bit into the weeds, but there's a lot of stuff we're doing on the back end. We're working to make a lot of this even more important. We're being headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona is a bit of a misnomer, right? The name phoenixNAP comes from that, but we're really pushing this message of one platform infrastructure platform worldwide. But one of the better parts about being located and headquartered in Phoenix is we're really close to Intel's R&D capabilities and their fabrication plants in Chandler. And so we spend a lot of time with them working on trying to make secure cloud environments a true kind of part of the future state of the cloud, and up into including things that you can't find anywhere else. And as soon as we have really cool things to announce, we'll make some announcements around that. But we're working really hard to try to blend infrastructure security and application security and network security to make all that kind of perfect triangle of sorts. And really kind of, again, making sure you got that scalable backup and DR plan, and providing advisement around security and secure OSs and things like that. I want to talk a little bit about something that was just announced. You guys can do the research on it. They're probably going to do a lot around it at VMworld as well. But we just launched our phoenixNAP disaster recovery for VMware product line. Like I said, there are I think there's only 4, maybe 6 now, I guess, VMware DRAAS powered providers leveraging the latest technologies from VMware with the vCloud Availability 3.0 or greater now, I guess, 3.0 plus technology. The best part about this, the thing that if you can take anything home from this presentation is you don't have to buy any software yourself. You can drop an OVA that we give you into your vCenter, and while purchasing nothing else, you can replicate to our VMware Cloud Verified service, and all for a price per VM and a price per terabyte per month. So very, very easy to consume, easy to understand, cloud DR capabilities, entirely VMware-based solution. I think that really leads to making sure that it's super fast implementation and onboarding, and getting that environment protected with no upfront capex. So I really think that that's a powerful message that a lot of people can kind of understand. So kind of rounding it out, we've got a number of different VMware technologies and VMware solutions. We talked a little bit about Data Security Cloud and VMware DRAAS today. We have our original VMware Cloud service called Virtual Private Data Center. It's still a very valuable part of our portfolio. It's great for dev and test workloads. And then we do have some boutique managed private cloud capabilities. Customers really looking for that. I want the same on-prem experience. I want the same level of control. I want to do a ton of things myself. I just can't justify the uplift and the capital associated with that latest refresh. I want somebody to manage it for me and really keep the lights on, so to speak, from an infrastructure perspective. That product is perfect for that. And I think with that, I will take questions. So if anybody has any questions they want to lob into the question area, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And give folks a couple of seconds here to do that. Okay, somebody asked, where do you have this Data Security Cloud service delivered today? We have it in Phoenix. It's kind of brand new. It's something that we've been working on for a really long time. We're working on an East Coast location. It should be available hopefully in the next 30 to 60 days. And then we'll be taking this environment to the Netherlands, which is one of our core locations, and then to Singapore following that. Anybody else that wants to ask a question? If you feel shy and don't want to ask questions in a live audience, I believe that you can pose them. There's some handouts here in the environment that allows you to kind of understand all the solutions we talked about today. We are open for meetings at VMworld as well. We're going to be there kind of in force. So if anybody wants to sit down and talk about, not even our services, if you just want to talk about security in a cloud environment, even if that's on-prem, and you want to have some coffee or grab a drink, please use that save the date for the VMworld 2019, and I'd be happy to meet up with any of you guys and talk through those. All right, well, I'll turn it back to the VMUG staff, and if we don't have any questions, we can wrap it up.
Great. Well, thank you so much, William, for taking the time to speak to us today. As a reminder, you will all receive a follow-up email with the on-demand link from today's webcast. And to find out more about the VMUG webcast program, you can visit vmug.com and check out the education page. And please make sure to complete the short online evaluations that will pop up as you exit the webcast, and let us know how you thought today's session went. And from all of us here at VMUG, thank you and have a great rest of your day.